Hello and welcome. Tonight, President Bola Tinubu restates his resolve to deliver on his campaign promises, eulogizes his predecessor, former President Muhammadu Buhari, for his statesmanship and non-interference in his government. Vice President Kashim Shettima advocates increased collaboration to achieve goals of the AFCTA at the ongoing World Economic Forum in Davos, says global future lies in Africa's youthful population. And final verdict expected on the Nasarawa and Kebbi state governorship appeals as the Supreme Court reserves judgment cases after the parties adopted their written briefs of argument.
On business news tonight, international energy giant Shell to sell its Nigerian onshore oil and gas assets to a consortium of local companies in a $2.4 billion deal.
On sports news tonight, 2023 Africa Cup of Nations record yet another upset as the brave warriors of Namibia stun the Carthage Eagles of Tunisia to record their first ever AFCON win.
From Abuja, the nation's capital, FCT Minister Nyesom Wike urges residents not to panic over recent surge in attacks in the nation's capital, says efforts are on to tackle criminal activities head-on.
And in international news from London, Donald Trump has won a landslide victory in the Iowa caucuses, cementing his status as the clear frontrunner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination.
We begin in the nation's capital, where the president today restated his commitment to delivering on his campaign promises and not to rest until that is achieved in the country. President Bola Tinubu made this vow in Abuja during the launch of a book on the former president, authored by his former spokesman, Mr. Femi Adesina. He also praised his predecessor, former President Muhammadu Buhari, for not interfering in the composition of his cabinet. Well, the event, of course, attracted important personalities, including former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, former First Lady Aisha Buhari, former Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, Senate President Godswill Akpabio, among several others.
It's a reunion of some sort, as former President Muhammadu Buhari, some of his cabinet members, the incumbent President Bola Tinubu, and some members of his cabinet attend the official unveiling of two sets of books in honor of the former President Buhari. The special advisor on media to the former president, Mr. Femi Adesina, and Mr. Udu Yakubu are the authors of the books, Working with Buhari and Muhammadu Buhari, The Nigerian Legacy.
I'll urge you to read the foreword, which was written by President Buhari, and then read the preface, in which I explained what the book was all about and what it is not about. It is about the software and not the hardware of the man Buhari and the government he headed.
Every administration is a story. Thankfully, we have presented today what is so far the most authoritative story of the PMB administration.
The two sets of books are launched in succession.
Not leave without getting copies of these books.
The man in whose honor these audiences gathered then takes to the podium.
Government is a continuum. It is like a relay race. You run your course and hand over the baton to the next person. This we have done, and the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration has my support and confidence in the quest for us to have a country of our dreams where there is emancipation for our teeming population.
It was also an opportunity to reminisce on the 2015 general elections and the former president's 8 years in office.
I hope you will be convinced by the presentation that would make that much was achieved and acknowledged and commended
I believe that in certain areas there seem to be some lacuna in success. For example, in certain areas of security and in certain areas of economics and in certain areas of finances. Yes, we have some problems, but a lot was achieved all the same.
There have been quite a few books already written about President Buhari, and they cover a lot of detail, a lot of it historical, and of course several about his numerous achievements since he first came into office in 1983. And I think Femi Adesina has done a great job, especially in covering an aspect of the former president that is not well known, which is his sense of humor.
While thanking his predecessor and those who served under his administration, President Bola Tinubu, who is a special guest of honor, restates his commitment to deliver on his campaign promises.
I've emulated one of those is non-interference, being a Democrat, responsibility for nation building, staying on course. I am determined to do just that.
The books will continue to serve as memorials of the experiences of Nigeria under former President Muhammadu Buhari. The authors are hoping that the materials will serve as resources in the academia and public discourse.
Outside the shores of the country, it was day 2 of the World Economic Forum as over 2,000 participants from 120 countries continued their deliberations in Davos, Switzerland. Part of the agenda today was a session which gave attention to the African Continental Free Trade Area. Nigeria's Vice President, Kashim Shettima, who was a discussant on the panel, believes that global future lies in Africa, especially because of the continent's youthful population.
Day 2 of the World Economic Forum has a session tagged An African Economy of Scale, with a panel of the Vice President of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima, the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfTA, Wamkele Mene, Senior Administrator at Government Pensions Administration Agency in South Africa, Mary Vilakazi, and Executive Vice Chairman, Africa and Asia, Yara International, Lubs Larsen. Thank you. Attention here is on the African Free Trade Area and how over 1.3 billion people are connected into a single market, unlocking novel opportunities for African and global businesses in critical industries.
The products that were traded ranged from processed agricultural products to manufactured goods to services also. The lessons that we learned is that actually the private sector is ready. Governments have to move much faster, but private sector across the continent is ready to take advantage of the AfCFTA. This year, the intensified effort will be on the services sector. So tourism sector, banking sector, within the framework of this this pilot, this guided trade initiative that we want to see, and the enabling tools. And I will mention just 2 of those enabling tools. One is the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, as I mentioned, to enable payments in local currency, to reduce the cost, to reduce the barriers to trade. And then second, soon the Ministers of Trade will conclude the protocol on digital trade, which will further enhance competitiveness of Africa's economy.
The achievement of AfTA is also of interest to the Pensions Administration Agency in South Africa.
When we look at the numbers of how much the frictional cost of trade is on the continent, because as you said, people need to access currencies that they don't trade in. I think it's about $5 billion a year, which I think which actually could go back into the economies. And I mean, you made the point around lending. So some of the challenges that we see, and where as banks we would like to leverage more more of a balance sheet for productive capital formation.
The potentials of digital revolution in Africa is the message from the Vice President of Nigeria, Mr. Kashim Shettima, and he seeks for partnership to explore the potentials.
We are the youngest continent in the world. For instance, Nigeria, the average age of the Nigerian population is 19. And this huge youth bulge, we can truly transform them into demographic dividends. I'm afraid I'm an eternal optimist. I don't want to see it as a demographic disaster that will consume all of us. Because once we wear our thinking caps as leaders, once we reach out to the global community for partnership, I believe that Africa stands poised to be a driver of change and growth in the world.
Sessions like this will continue until Friday, January the 19th, when business and country leaders will return home with knowledge and collaborations gained at the World Economic Forum of 2024 for implementation. Ini John Mekwa, Channels Television News.
Back here in Nigeria, the Supreme Court has reserved judgment in the appeal filed by the candidate of the People's Democratic Party in Nasarawa State, Mr. David Ombugadu, challenging the election of Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State. Justice Kudrat Kekereekun, who led a 5-member panel of the Apex Court, also reserved judgment in the appeal filed by the candidate of the PDP in Kebbi State, retired Major General Aminu Bande, challenging the election of Governor Nasir Idris. The Apex Court reserved the judgment after the council to all the parties adopted their written briefs of argument.
The Supreme Court is filled as the candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the last governorship election in Nasarawa State, David Ombugadu, seek to overturn the verdict of the Court of Appeal, which affirmed the election of Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State. At the day's proceedings, lead counsel to the PDP and its governorship candidate, Kanu Agabi, appealed to the Apex Court to set aside the November 23, 2023 judgment of the Court of Appeal. In its place, Mr. Agabi canvassed that the October 2, 2023 judgment of the Nasarawa State Governorship Election Petitions Tribunal, which was in favor of the PDP, be restored. In response, lawyers to Governor Sule, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the APC prayed the court to dismiss the appeal for lacking in merit. After listening to arguments from the lawyers, Justice Kekereekun announced that judgment has been reserved and that the date for its delivery will be communicated to the parties involved. Although lawyers to the other parties were unavailable for comments, counsel to the PDP and the candidate of the party in Nasarawa State expressed optimism regarding their appeals.
We have urged the court to restore the judgment of the trial tribunal that declared David Ombugadu as the duly elected governor of Nasarawa State. That's our prayer.
This is a litmus test for the Apex Court, and we believe they will do the needful. Thank you very much. We shall come back and all of us will be on ground to attest to what will be the outcome of their verdict.
Back in the courtroom, lawyers to the PDP candidate in the last governorship election, retired Major General Aminu Bande, also adopted their brief of argument, challenging the verdict of the Court of Appeal, which affirmed the election of Governor Nasir Idris of Kebbi State. The appeal was opposed by the counsel to the Kebbi State governor, who asked the court to dismiss the appeal by upholding the verdict of the Kebbi State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal and the Court of Appeal, which affirmed the election of Governor Idris.
Our prayer before the court is that our appeal be allowed on the basis that the Deputy Governor of Kebbi State was not qualified to contest the election, and on that basis the entire election should be nullified, and the candidate of the PDP, General Bande, standing behind me, be declared the governor of Kebbi State.
our expectation is that the court will affirm the concurrent findings of both the tribunal and the Court of Appeal and dismiss the appeal, of course, because it lacks any merit.
The Court of Appeal sitting in Abuja had on the 23rd of November 2023 reversed the sack of Governor Abdullahi Sule by the Nasarawa State Election Petitions Tribunal and also upheld the judgment of the Kebbi State Election Petition Tribunal, affirming Mr. Nasser Idris as the governor of Kebbi State.
In part two after the break, a day after being sworn in for his second tenure, Governor Hope Uzodinma dissolves cabinet, promises an all-inclusive government and open-door policy in governance. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. President Bola Tinubu restates his resolve to deliver on his campaign promises, eulogizes former President Muhammadu Buhari for his statesmanship and non-interference in his government. Vice President Kashim Shettima advocates increased collaboration to achieve goals of the AFCTA at the ongoing World Economic Forum in Davos, says global future lies in Africa's youthful population. Final verdict expected on the Nasarawa and Kebbi States governorship appeals as the Supreme Court reserves judgment cases after the parties adopted their written briefs of argument. And Donald Trump wins in the Iowa caucuses, cementing his status as the clear frontrunner for the U.S. 2024 Republican presidential nomination. In Imo State, Governor Hope Uzodinma has dissolved his cabinet a day after he was sworn in for a second term in office. The governor thanked all the cabinet members and all appointees for their contribution to the successful completion of his first tenure in office, promising all-inclusive government and an open-door policy in his second term. The governor was speaking during a meeting at the Government House in Owerri.
As we move into our second term, I will soon unfold a guiding document that will direct our vision, that will direct our movement and development. We are now moving to a new government, and all of us must not cross over at the same time. Regrettably, based on the current economic situation we find ourselves, we will manage our system to the extent that those who are in, there may not be too much difference with those who are also out. Like I said earlier, we are a family. There will be some kind of balancing. I have worked with you for 4 years. I don't need anybody to tell me who anybody here is. The second tenure of office is for us to leave a legacy. It's for us to do things that will be remembered for in Imo State.
Meanwhile, following his victory at the Supreme Court, Governor Dauda Lawal of Zamfara State has renewed his administration's commitment to deliver on his rescue mission agenda for the state. Governor Lawal stated this while addressing a large crowd of supporters and party members on his return to Gusau, the Zamfara state capital, after the Supreme Court reversed his sack by the Court of Appeal as governor of the state.
Members of the Zamfara State chapter of the People's Democratic Party and supporters troop out on the road from Safi town to Gusau, the state capital, to welcome Governor Dauda Lawal to the state after the Supreme Court affirmed his election. The governor's convoy wade through the streets of Gusau as the people urge him to focus on his campaign promises.
I think the Supreme Court's verdict reflects the wish and will of the people of Zamfara. And you have seen this morning that all the citizens of the state have come out en masse to welcome His Excellency, the executive governor. and you can't quantify the kind of joy and hope that the people of Zamfara actually are feeling today, because today is exceptional.
Right from the campaign, the manifesto has been that he's going to bring so many changes to Zamfara State, and it is what we are expecting, and we have started seeing.
Addressing the crowd, the governor lists the efforts of his administration to develop the state, including schools, hospitals, road infrastructure, and revamping agriculture through improving the state's economy. He is promising to continue with plans to deliver on projects that will bring prosperity to the people.
Let me assure you that based on the promises we made during the campaign, the security in Zamfara is of paramount importance. And we are on it. We'll continue on it until we find solution to it, inshallah. Second most important thing is education. We started taking measures or putting measures in place to make sure we restore education the way it should be, like every other state in the country. Of course, healthcare is also important, and we're doing so much in that area by reconstructing and rehabilitating most of the hospitals in all the 14 local governments to make sure healthcare is given its priority also. We are also working on infrastructure. You can see the urban renewal.
Residents are also hoping that with the affirmation of Governor Lawal, he can focus on delivering on his campaign promises, especially the issue of insecurity in the state.
So now let's head to the nation's capital, and Gloria Mizuki is standing by to give us the very latest from our Abuja studios. Take it away, Gloria.
Many thanks, Ayo. We begin with security matters in the Federal Capital Territory, where the minister, Mr. Nyesom Wike, is urging residents not to panic, as all hands are on deck to address the rising kidnappings and other threats. He frowned at what he described as the inactiveness of area council chairmen and challenged them to carry out their duties effectively. Mr. Wike gave the assurance while briefing the press before going into a closed-door session with security agents and area council chairmen in Abuja.
All of us are aware of the security situation in the Federal Capital Territory, particularly Buhari and some other areas that were witnessed security challenges. Yes, I'm aware that sometimes too the press overblow what is happening. But all of us are concerned as the Federal Capital Territory that houses virtually every Nigerian. We owe a duty to make sure that this place is safe. We'll do all we can, and we're sure Nigerians who reside here that there's no need for panic. We're taking every step to make sure there's no challenges, things that we must have to resolve. So this meeting is practically to look into such challenges and see how we'll be able to resolve the problems. We are not sleeping. Security agencies are also not sleeping. We'll provide every support that they require in order to allay the fears of the citizens.
Meanwhile, some arrests have been made in the ongoing efforts to tackle the rising insecurity in the nation's capital, according to the Secretary of the Federal Capital Territory Command and Control Center, Mr. Peter Olumuji. Mr. Olumuji made the revelation when he appeared as a guest on Channel's television show Sunrise Daily. is calling for strategic intelligence gathering and collaboration among residents to tackle the menace.
The kidnappers are not having the field day in FCT. FCT is relatively secured and safe. If you look at the incident of the ransom pay, that's the Zuma 1 incident, the parents brought out ransom to want to pay and the kidnappers rejected it. There's always more to what you see out there. That's why I say there's some certain information I cannot divulge, because from credible intelligence being gathered presently, there's more to that kidnap incident that meets the eyes. Now they asked for 60 million. When they brought some part of it, they rejected it. And before you know, the report got to the security agency that one of the daughter has been killed, which is so sad. No government will accept such. And before you know, within a space of less than 24 hours, they increased that ransom to 100 million. So what are they trying to achieve? And like we've said, within the community, the security agencies have been able to identify over time now that you have informants within the community. And this leads me to the aspect where we talked about knowing your neighbor. These abductors cannot come into any community without an insider having something to do with it. The FCT emergency call number is a toll-free number, an MTN number. The number is 080-3123-0330. I take it again, 080-3123-0330. Then the second one is 080-9993-6312.
There's more on security. Leaders of the Fulani community in Kachia local government area of Kaduna State and the Northern Consensus Movement have called on the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, to probe the alleged arrest and killing of 17 youths in Laduga community. The victims were reportedly arrested by soldiers between December 30, 2023 and January 6, 2024 at the Laduga Grazing Reserve, after which their bodies were discovered inside the bush in Kachia local government some days later. The national president of the Gan-Anla Fulani Development Association, Mr. Ibrahim Abdullahi, made this request during a news conference in Kaduna.
What we realize is that when these killings are done, the corpses are dumped close to villages of our neighbors, probably with the aim of instigating reaction from our people. And that's why he said he's appealing to our people, and we are also appealing to them that they should. We know who our killers are. If you find the corpse of your brother close to a village, please don't attack that village. It is done deliberately to create tension. This area, Laduga Grazing Reserve, and all other surrounding areas, we have been living in peace for so many years with the communities. So we will not allow anybody to come and create any tension between us. Lastly, let me call on the CDS, the Chief of Defense Staff. He is from our area, he is our son. When he was appointed, some of us were very happy. Some of our leaders even went to him to congratulate him. We don't know. This thing is geared towards tarnishing his image. We want to call on him to intervene, investigate thoroughly, because he's not the first Chief of Defense Staff. General Martin Luther Agoi at a time was the Chief of Army Staff and Chief of Defense Staff, and he served with credibility.
Still ahead on the news at 10, international energy giant Shell to sell its onshore oil and gas assets in Nigeria in a $2.4 billion deal, ending nearly a century of operation in the country. That's on Business News. So join us again. Welcome back. You're still watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television. Youths are the fulcrum of every society as they play an important role in its development. This is according to the coordinator of the National Counter-Terrorism Center, retired Rear Admiral Yaminu Musa, at the National Policy Dialogue on Youth Engagement and Empowerment Program. According to him, the convening of the National Youth Dialogue in collaboration with the UN Office of Counter-Terrorism is an essential step in the provision of the needed coordination of all efforts to rid Nigeria of all terrorist activities.
In line with his vision of coordinating Nigeria's fight against terrorism, the National Counter-Terrorism Center, in collaboration with the United Nations Office of Counter-Terrorism, is organizing this National Policy Dialogue, a youth-focused program on preventing and countering violent extremism. Those in attendance include the leadership of the National Counter-Terrorism Center, representatives of the United Nations, government parastatals, and 22 young leaders from selected states, amongst other invited guests.
For his welcome address, please, you can do.
The coordinator of the National Counter-Terrorism Center sets the tone for the conversation, highlighting the critical importance of fostering meaningful engagement with the youth and the need for them to be ambassadors of peace for a safer and more resilient country.
To increase the resilience of our young people against violent extremism and recruit into terrorist groups by increasing their awareness of violent extremist trend and vulnerabilities, their cognitive complexity, and empowering them to rise as leaders within their own community.
The speeches and remarks centered on the importance of the event and collaboration of all stakeholders, particularly at a time when Nigeria is grappling with issues of insecurity.
You are the voice of young Nigerians, contributing your thoughts and energy on how to increase their resilience and finding ways to strengthen the bond between communities and national authorities against violent extremism. You have been part of a very special program, a program that is a key priority for our office and which represents the reason many of us work in this field.
We have initiatives. We are one of the best education policy, empowerment, development. We are very, very intellectual people. And we have resources, when we're on global stage, everybody resonates with us. Finishing is the problem. Building trust with what? With various agencies. In understanding what the challenge is in what is security. What might be sustaining insecurity in Northwest is different from Southeast. But at the same time, young people do not feel safe. Young people cannot access education. Young people cannot travel.
The Youth Engagement and Empowerment Program, organized by the United Nations Office of Counter-Terrorism, features 22 young leaders drawn from 12 states across Nigeria and is supported by the United Nations Peace and Development Trust Fund. Victoria Longjun for Channels Television News.
Well, that's it from the nation's capital. It's back to you, Ayo, for the rest of the news at 10.
And thank you, Gloria. The Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Mr. Festus Keyamo, has described the maintenance, overhaul and repair facility at the Victor Atta International Airport in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital, as one project that will add value to the aviation sector in Nigeria, as well as the West, Central and North African regions. Speaking to journalists after he inspected the facility in company of the Akwa Ibom State Governor, Pastor Umar Eno, Mr. Keyamo said the project, when completed, will make Nigeria an aviation hub.
What I've just seen is a hub. It's a proper hub where they can process international passengers and transfer them from one section to the other for them to catch the international flights. We have been struggling to reach this standard, but what we have here is a hidden jewel. But it's all for Nigerians. Yes. It's all for the good of Nigerians. This is beautiful. I have never seen a subnational that is so dedicated, so committed to a project like of this magnitude as much as Akwa Ibom State. And I've been blessed with governors, successive governors, who have, put their mind to this. And he's the finisher of the race, the perfecter and the finisher, like a proper pastor that he is. He's the perfecter and the finisher of this race.
But Governor Umar Eno thanked the minister for the visit and promised to work with the federal government to ensure the success of the project.
It's a wonderful collaboration in my mind,
And your visit here this morning confirms who you are and how you intend to take the Ministry of Aviation and work this partnership. I'm already excited, and we hope with this short visit will be worth your while, and we trust that as you go back to Abuja, you live with not just fond memories, but you can now have a picture that you have a partner in Akwa Ibom, and together we can make this a hub for the South-South and indeed for the Niger Delta in this region, connecting the world through here.
Hearing in the Offa bank robbery case resumed before Justice Halimat Salman in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital. Ayobade Akinbosun and 4 others are standing trial in the case, which began on November the 11th of 2018. At the resumed hearing today, the 5th defendant, Ni Ogundiran, and the 3rd defendant, Adiola Abraham, were examined and cross-examined by the defense counsel, Matthias Emeribe, and prosecution counsel, Rotimi Jacobs. It's now well over 5 years since the case began, but one of the lawyers say there is no cause for alarm as long as justice is served at the end of the day. Fear gripped residents in many parts of Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, today following a loud explosion by Ade Avenue on Awolowo Way, Bodija, which is said to have claimed at least 1 life. Residents there who spoke to Channels Television said the wave of the blast shook buildings and even shattered windows of houses and cars close to and far away from the scene. Zonal coordinator for the National Emergency Management Agency in the Southwest, Saheed Akiode, also told Channels Television that emergency responders, including the operatives of the fire service in Oyo State, have been deployed to the scene. Reacting to the incident via a statement on X, formerly known as Twitter, the Oyo State government said it is aware of reports of an explosion in the state and urged residents to remain calm as security agencies are investigating this to determine the source and cause of the incident.
That's that nest. Drive down.
It's now time for some business news with Jocko Rogers.
Thank you, Ayotunde. Welcome to Business News. In a move that may be seen as a signal to a shift away from onshore oil production, international energy giant Shell has agreed to sell its Nigerian onshore oil and gas assets for a total of $2.4 billion. The deal, which was announced by Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited today, marks a significant shift from Shell, which has been operating in Nigeria for over 90 years. The buyer is a consortium led by Nigerian independent energy company Renaissance Africa Energy, which includes No Western, Aradel Energy, First EMP, Walter Smith, and Petroleum, and marks a significant change in the landscape of Nigeria's oil industry. A royal court in Jersey in the United States has ruled in favor of the repatriation of stolen assets worth about $8.9 million to Nigeria. The forfeiture notice to the court was initiated by Jersey's Attorney General Mark Temple, who told the court that part of the funds was allegedly shared with top politicians in Nigeria ahead of the 2015 general elections. According to the U.S. court ruling, the funds or assets which were allegedly diverted under the pretext of purchasing arms to combat Boko Haram terrorist group were deposited in a Jersey bank account. The court found out that the money was likely stolen by Nigerian government officials and not used for the intended arms purchase. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission says it has approved 13 new licenses for off-grid power generation and independent electricity distribution and trading companies. In its newly released third quarter 2023 report, the Commission said that the newly issued licenses were granted within the period, with the total electricity generating capacity assigned to licensees amounting to 40.9 megawatts. The NERC disclosed that the issuance of 5 new off-grid generation licenses is capable of generating 8.81 megawatts of electricity during the review period. From there, we head off to the local stock market to see how today's trading went on.
Welcome to the stock market report. Well, the stockbrokers I spoke to last week said this week we were dominated by profit taking, but no, they were wrong. 3.93%, almost 4% rise today, 87,970 points. That's a new level for this market. Market cap 48.13 trillion. Let's look at the buy pressure, the market activity today. We see 1 billion stocks traded today, valued at 16.04 billion naira. We see deals 14,000. This is a level we've not seen in a while. So we're seeing a very bullish market right now with serious buy pressure. Let's look at the sectoral performance. We see banking shining again. Banking counter 4.35%. Consumer goods 2.97%. Oil and gas 0.11%. So I guess the issue now is if you're an investor in this market, you'd be wondering, where do I take profit? But I guess you want to take it at the top. So you have to find it. That's the Stock Market Report. I'm Laddie Williams.
That's Business News tonight. Ayatollah, back to you.
Many thanks, Joke. Former U.S. President Donald Trump says his landslide victory in the Iowa caucuses was very special. Speaking to supporters late last night, Mr. Trump expressed hope that Americans could come together to straighten out the world. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Donald Trump has won a landslide victory in the Iowa caucuses, cementing his status as the clear frontrunner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination.
We want to thank the great people of Iowa. Thank you. We love you all.
With 51.1% of the vote, Trump hailed his victory as very special, telling reporters he wants to straighten up the problems of the world.
Thanks so much.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who campaigned relentlessly in the state, has edged out former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley to take a distant second place. Iowa is the first of the state-by-state contests where Republican voters pick their White House candidate. Next up is New Hampshire, and the candidates are heading out there today ahead of the primary next Tuesday.
Together, we have created a movement that I think is going to carry our nation to the next level.
Meanwhile, biotech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy has dropped out of the race and endorsed Mr. Trump.
Whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative, it would be so nice if we could come together and straighten out the world and straighten out the problems and straighten out all of the death and destruction that we're witnessing. That's practically never been like this. It's just so important, and I want to make that a very big part of our message. We're going to come together. It's going to happen soon, too. It's going to happen soon.
The US has condemned Iran over ballistic missile strikes on Iraq's northern city of Erbil on Monday night, calling them reckless and imprecise. Iran's Revolutionary Guards said they struck what they called were an Israeli spy headquarters in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Local authorities said 4 civilians were killed and 6 hurt in the attack. Iraq recalled its ambassador from Tehran, condemning the strikes as a blatant violation of sovereignty. There has been no comment from Israel. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has said unification with the South is no longer possible and that the constitution should be changed to designate it the principal enemy. State media reported Mr. Kim also said 3 organizations dealing with reunification would be shut down. South Korea's president said it would respond multiple times stronger to any provocation from the North. The 2 Koreas have been divided since the Korean War ended in 1953. Prosecutors say a suspected Kenyan cult leader is to be charged with murder and terrorism over the deaths of more than 400 people found in mass graves. Paul Mackenzie was arrested in April after the discovery of hundreds of bodies, some of whom were said to have starved themselves to death. Kenyan prosecutors say that he and 94 others will be charged in court in Malindi. The self-proclaimed pastor has denied responsibility for the deaths. Local officials have said about 225 people, including children, have died of starvation in Ethiopia's drought-hit and war-scarred Tigray region since last July. Almost all of the deaths, 209, have been recorded in the rural area of Edgar Abiy, health officials have been quoted by regional TV as saying. In another area, 16 people displaced by a brutal 2-year civil war, which ended in 2022, have lost their lives due to hunger. Tigray officials had previously warned that a famine similar to the one Ethiopia witnessed in the mid-80s, when hundreds of thousands of children and adults died, could be on the horizon. A New Zealand MP has resigned following multiple allegations of shoplifting, which police are investigating. Golriz Garraman of the Green Party is alleged to have stolen 3 items from 2 clothing stores, one in Auckland and the other in Wellington. The former UN human rights lawyer made history in 2017 as the first refugee in the country's government. She once held her party's justice portfolio. Work-related stress made her behave completely out of character, she said. And Succession, Beef and the Bear were the big winners at the Emmy Awards, which took place in Los Angeles.
Kieran Culkin, Succession.
Sarah Snook, Kieran Culkin and Matthew McFadden all took home acting prizes for Succession, while the show also won Best Drama Series overall. Also at the ceremony, Sir Elton John won his first Emmy Award, finally giving him EGOT status. That means he has joined an exclusive club of performers who have won an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar and Tony Award. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon. Sports is now having won the Serie A title with Napoli last season and ending 2023 by being named the African Footballer of the Year. Super Eagles forward Victor Osimhen says lifting the Cup of Nations with Nigeria might just top the list. Osimhen already has a goal to his credit in Cote d'Ivoire, getting the equalizer against Equatorial Guinea, and the team will be banking on its experience in front of goal against host nation Cote d'Ivoire on Thursday. Staying with the Super Eagles, coach Jose Peseiro is keen on minimizing the pressure placed on the 3-time African champions ahead of the clash against Cote d'Ivoire. With the arrivals of Kelechi Iheanacho and Terry Murphy, Peseiro has been provided with options, and he believes the team that scored 22 goals in the qualifying series could start firing better. Let's stay with the continental tournament for a moment as Dion Hoto scored in the 88th minute to give Namibia a shock 1-0 win over former champions Tunisia in Group E. It was the first victory for the Brave Warriors in the competition after 2 draws and 7 losses since their debut in 1998. Meanwhile, in other encounters, Bertrand Traoré came off the bench to score a 96-minute winner for the penalty spot against as Burkina Faso beats Mauritania 1-0 in their opening game earlier today. An Italian football club, AS Roma, have sacked manager Jose Mourinho, while former player Daniel De Rossi has been named as his replacement. The 60-year-old Portuguese took over Roma in 2021 and guided the club to the inaugural Europa Conference League trophy in 2022 and the final of last season's Europa League. However, Roma have struggled this campaign and currently sit 9th in Serie A after losing to AC Milan 3-1 on Sunday. And that's a wrap. It's back to Ayotunde.
Many thanks, Kelly. The students from 5 faculties of education, social science, environmental science, pure science and arts were awarded with various degrees, diplomas and prizes as the University of Lagos begins its 54th convocation ceremonies. Vice Chancellor of UNILAG, Professor Folashade Ogunshola, said out of the 17,456 students, 2,253 students will be graduating on day 1 as part of activities lined up. A total of 17,456 students will be receiving various honors. Of these, 10,670 students will receive first degrees and diplomas, while 6,886 will be awarded postgraduate degrees.
Without doubt, I know many of you have looked forward to this day, a day you will remember with fondness for many years to come. I congratulate all graduating students for your diligence, resilience, and the hard work you put into completing your respective programs. You have been trained and tutored and found worthy in character and learning to be able to be here today, to be celebrated and honored.
And finally, tonight we bring you some of the jokes told about former President Muhammadu Buhari's sense of humor as shared by some of those who know him or worked with him at close quarters.
2019, I complained to him very bitterly about a libelous comment that was made against me, and that I wanted to give him notice that I would be suing those who had libeled me. And he said to me in his usual style, Professor, don't let these people bother you. Do you know what they did to me recently? They actually printed an invitation card that I was going to get married. on a Friday at the National Mosque. He said, and you won't believe Nigerians, there were thousands of them waiting for me at the National, waiting for me to come and get married. and to tell you that President Buhari was always ready to laugh at himself.
Mrs. Buhari, where is that new wife that
I remember sometime in 2016, just before he went on his medical vacation, I told him I wanted to visit the oil-producing communities in the Delta, and that I thought dialogue with the militants in the wake of the destruction of pipelines and other assets was a good idea. And he told me the experiences of the then Minister of Youth and Sports, Talong, who had visited the Delta some time back. But while agreeing with me that it was a good idea, and just as I was getting up to leave, he said with that mischievous glint in his eye, Professor, don't be the first vice president to be kidnapped.
And the main news again. President Bola Tinubu today restated his resolve to deliver on his campaign promises as he eulogized his predecessor, former President Muhammadu Buhari, for his statesmanship and non-interference in his government. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun. Do have a good night and stay safe.